We're going to talk on progressive enhancement. Please excuse the date set here. I know it's a few weeks ago. We're in 2026. But included in the presentation, we'll go over some examples and there's code to look at as well. But firstly, the next slide. This is just something funny I wanted to show you. The image didn't turn up too well, but it's just like a funny license. But anyway, so in this presentation, I just want to give a bit of a disclaimer. I will be sharing my own opinions. So these aren't really stated in fact, and I'm not going to be trying to sort of make claims that are exactly truth. I'm just sharing my opinions of what I know currently at this moment. So I also might talk about accessibility and optimistic updates included in this kind of what progressive enhancement is. And really, this talk it's kind of just parroting talks I've seen before and like previous talks that have been given as kind of inspiration. So there are three things I'd point people who watch this video to. One is, I can't pronounce the name, but Paolo Russotti. His talk on progressive enhancement is really good. Much better than what I could talk about. So, I mean, you could probably stop that and go to his video. He gives really good examples on like how to use it, why to use it, and that kind of inspired me to make this video. Also, Svelte tenants, so if you just read through that, this kind of doesn't explain directly why you should use progressive enhancement, but it kind of gives that idea and a philosophy of you want to build really good apps, and I think progressive enhancement is a way to build good apps. Also, the talk by Rich Harris, which really drives that philosophy home. But like, what is progressive enhancement? So we can probably start off with what it's not. So originally, I thought progressive enhancement meant no JavaScript, like your application should work without JavaScript. That's what I thought the aim was, but it turns out that's not the case. Progressive enhancement doesn't mean no JavaScript. It doesn't actually mean that everyone who uses the application should have the same user experience. So we're not assuming everyone's coming to your website without JavaScript. I mean, most users have JavaScript. I think about 98% of users who use a web application on the web have JavaScript enabled. So it's not really the case where there's no JavaScript anymore. So we don't have to build with having no JavaScript in mind. Rather, we need to think about progressive enhancement as a design philosophy. So that this definition by MDM is really good. Instead of thinking about no JavaScript, we should think about if there's no JavaScript there, what sort of compromises are we going to make? So you have this kind of baseline functionality, and then you have these kind of what I call nice to have. So it's nice to have loading spinners and optimistic updates. But if JavaScript isn't there, can you still have that baseline functionality, which might be to submit a post or perform a particular action? Like we still want to have that happening without JavaScript, and then we can layer on these nice to haves, which involve having JavaScript. So that's kind of the gist of what progressive enhancement is and what it is. So there's also another term called gradual degradation, which I believe is just the same thing but backwards. So progressive enhancement, you've got your base functionality, and then you layer on the nice to haves as the user has, JavaScript, better internet connection, a better, more up-to-date operating system, modern up-to-date browser. Versus gradual degradation is just the opposite. So you have the best possible functionality that you can provide, and then as things degrade, like versions of JavaScript, versions of the browser that aren't up to date, or poor internet connections where JavaScript doesn't load properly or breaks, then you kind of degrade from that. So you can see it's just the same thing but backwards. And also, I think we should always build a progressive enhancement in mind. The no JavaScript thing is really a product question, but I believe that as developers, we should be trying to, provide the best experience possible, and then try and make that experience uniform or we'll try and provide at least a baseline experience for everyone. Cool. So why is it important? So the issue is, I'm just one person. I really can't change the world with these videos or things that I post or the code that I write, right? I have a very small impact on the world, but I believe if you try and do the best you can, and you kind of tell people around you, this is the best that you can, this is what we should be doing, or you make suggestions about doing things with progressive enhancement. I think it's still worth talking about this and trying to do the best you can, even though it may seem futile. Because if everyone acts this way, like everyone tries to do the best job, then we have a better web. And I think the web is kind of, talking back to those previous talks, Svelte tenants, or Rich Harris' talk on the North Star of Svelte, the web is kind of a sacred thing. It's basically given to us free. It's given me a job. It's given it's given an opportunity to so many people around the world, and I think we should try and build applications on there that are good user experience to everyone, that gives everyone, most people, the ability to access it and a really good experience. So that's why I think it's really important. I think progressive enhancement is a good design philosophy to have to enable good user experience, and also making things accessible to a wide variety of people, of different connections, internet speeds, and computer power, computational power, etc. Yeah, I think it's a really good experience to have. And I think I can't explain this like with fact, but I do think if you try and build things with progressive enhancement in mind, you actually make the code simple. So instead of having everything on the client side, most things are server side, and you can lean more into the browser features, which I'll show you in some examples. But that's what I believe if you're kind of building this sort of way. And plus, if you have progressive enhancement in mind, you do provide a good user experience. It might be a bit complicated, even though it sort of contradicts the code being simple. Maybe difficult at the first, but I think just being aware of it is probably better than not being aware of it at all. Cool, so let's jump into some examples. So the first one is with checkboxes. So I'll just give myself over here will be better. So we've got 3 checkboxes here. They all work, right? So they have the first one uses JavaScript to show the text. Same with this one here, and then this uses a CSS trick. So there could be a scenario where JavaScript doesn't work, and then this text might be really important to show. It might show a particular warning or indicate something to the user when it gets checked. So what we can do is we can just disable JavaScript and we kind of see what happens. So if I go here into settings, and I think we disable JavaScript, should reload the page. So you can see immediately, if I just deselect these, the original doesn't work. You don't get that important text. That might be a vital thing, might be a particular warning that the user would miss. So we've got 2 options. We could, if JavaScript is not enabled, or it's not there, or it's broken, we could just tell the user there's no JavaScript. We can't use this, or you just need to refresh the page. Or we could provide a kind of a CSS default. So those are the 2 options that we have. I mean, we just need to consider the fact that JavaScript may not be there. We have that sort of idea of progressive enhancement. So that's the first example. So the next example is kind of spelt specific. It's to do with form actions. So we have a list of people here in alphabetical order, and we want to shuffle. I'll make it bigger as well. We want to shuffle the people in the daily stand-up. So we click this here, and you can see we get a nice kind of loading screen as it's doing the shuffling around, and we don't get that annoying page refresh. So if we were to inspect this, and same thing, we just turn off JavaScript. Yeah, so we disable it. The thing is, are we still able to get that baseline functionality? So the baseline functionality, what we really need to do is to shuffle the order. We don't really care about the loading state too much, but that's the nice to have. So if I shuffle this, we still get that nice, we get the change in the names. You'll see that the page kind of slightly refreshes, which is not a nice experience, but even without JavaScript, we can still provide some functionality, and that's kind of the point I want to make. So we'll jump over to another example. So we go optimistic updates. So because we have the ability to show a loading state, what we could also do is provide an optimistic update. So you see if I submit this here, it will show a loading sort of spinner and then the date of when it was submitted. So instead of that, we know that this is going to be what it shows. So if I just refresh the page, we can just immediately show that date. So that's an optimistic update. And we can just show a tick to show it's loaded at the end. But that's something we could provide with optimistic updates. So that gives a more snappy user interface. So instead of having to wait for the server to provide the response, we just immediately provide the response based on what we expect to happen. If we disable JavaScript, though, on the other hand, so we lose that kind of nice to have, that nice optimistic update. We don't even get a loading screen, but at least we still get that baseline functionality of the submission happening, and that's through SvelteKit's form actions. So let's refresh the page. What does matter? So if I submit this here, it's the same. It's going to give you the same behavior. At least we still have the form actioning happening. Cool. And I think we'll just do the last example, which is here. So we have show and tell. So if I were to toggle this, you'll see that we're just using JavaScript to conditionally render this sort of this text here. Now we do have other options. We could use a popover, or we could use something like details. So this is an example where we're leaning into the browser rather than creating our own kind of managing state in the client. We can use HTML built-in features like details and summary, as well as HTML popovers to show text. And I'll show you that if we turn off JavaScript again. Settings. We disable JavaScript. You see that the toggle's now broken, which is, I think quite annoying, but at least we still get those HTML features working. Awesome. So thanks for listening to my little quick presentation about progressive enhancement. I hope you found it useful. Feedback is welcome. I want to get better at presenting and writing things. And this is really just for me to get better at presenting things and sort of formulating my ideas rather than, trying to become famous with these talks. I don't expect these to get a lot of views, but the idea is I just want to get better at formulating my thoughts and presenting those thoughts. If anyone here watching this, what would you like to talk about? What would you like to, discuss next? We could talk about learning Elixir, its functional paradigm. I did that for Advent of Code. I also read Accelerate, which has been a really foundational book for me into 2025, reading that book and kind of using the concepts of small pull requests. We can even talk about development setups and other books that we're reading. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you found it useful and have a good day.